660 AM. The Answer.
More of Ladies Can We Talk with Debbie Georgatos, right here on 660 AM The Answer.
Hey there, welcome back, Ladies Can We Talk? I'm so glad you've tuned in. And we're talking tonight with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, who's a friend of the show. He's been on before. And just prior to the break, we were talking about the Iranian deal. And I do want to switch to talking about the GOP debates. But I want to address one other thing we were talking about a minute ago, which is this. I think the reason a lot of Americans think, well, this couldn't be that bad a deal. It couldn't be as dangerous as Republicans say, as the Center for Security Policy says, as Alan West says, because if it were so bad, why would Obama negotiate it? I mean, he lives here, so do you have an answer? Why would he do a bad deal?
Well, I think that you have to talk to President Obama about that. I believe that the president is more so concerned about doing something that, quote unquote, no one else has done and having a display in his presidential library. This is what happens immediately. Iran becomes an economic power with the billions of dollars of unfrozen assets, the new markets that will be opened up between European countries and also the oil markets. In year 5, the UN weapons embargo on conventional weapons is lifted. In year 8, the ballistic missile embargo is lifted. In year 10, they can go back to full spending of centrifuges and enriching uranium. In year 15, they can build new nuclear reactors. I don't see how this benefits the United States of America whatsoever.
You know, the argument from the left has been, well, it may slow them down some, but, you know, we didn't even try negotiating, as far as I read, even try negotiating. For example, why do they get to have intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs? Those are just, they are there to get the weapons over to us. I mean, they are there to hit America.
Absolutely. The mutually assured destruction theory does not work with a radical Islamic theocracy that you have in Iran.
Yeah. You know, it's a little bit like negotiating with the kamikaze pilots because they don't care if they die.
No, they don't. And that's exactly. And their belief is rooted in their theocracy of an apocalyptic event that brings back the hidden imam, the Mahdi, so that they can have the restoration of a global Islamic caliphate. So how do you sit down with the irrational lot that they are? And again, I take them for their word. When they say death to America, death to Israel, I believe that that's what they truly believe.
You know, that reminds me, there was a comment that a lot of people picked up on, but President Obama actually compared the leaders in Iran who've been chanting death to Israel, death to America, and all that, the opponents of this deal, and compared them to the Republicans in Congress who are questioning this deal, who have the right under the Corker deal to vote up or down. I mean, I shouldn't even have to ask, but is that the most outrageous thing you've ever heard?
There have been many other outrageous things, but I think this is part of the hubris. We have seen the left refer to Republicans as suicide bombers, having, bombs strapped to their chests, and call them extremists and things of this nature. So they're using the same language that they refer to terrorists to anyone that is standing in opposition. So now the question is, because Senator Schumer and several other leading Democrats have come out against this deal, are they also like the Iranian hardliners? That's an interesting question.
That's a good question. One last question on this, and I want to turn to hear your thoughts about the debates. But just suppose there would be the case that, the Congress voted the deal down, President Obama vetoed it, and by some, answer to prayer, or the House and Senate actually had enough votes to override his veto. I had the thought, why would that change President Obama's conduct in any way? Is he really going to? I fear he just moved forward anyway with the deal.
Well, I think that what you will see happening, because he went to the United Nations and got the Security Council to unanimously endorse it, and the EU has also endorsed the agreement, we can institute sanctions on our own. We can increase those sanctions, but it's going to be almost like with South Africa and the apartheid government. Yeah. We're going to have to put pressure on other governments that are looking to do business with Iran as well.
Yeah. I read in fact, I think we talked about last week in the show, there's one French diplomat that said it is not true that if Congress votes this down, it's not true that everything falls apart. We could get a better deal. I don't know if you read about that. There's one French. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that we should. I think it would send an incredible message to Iran, is that we don't trust you. You've been absolutely more obtuse and more belligerent since this quote unquote deal was signed. And we need to let them know we're not suckers.
Man, I would love that. Just sure wish you were there in Congress, Lieutenant Colonel West. Okay, but changing subject entirely. This past week, we had the GOP debates, the Fox News debate in Cleveland, and there was a lot of a lot of controversy, I guess. I mean, there were two debates, as we mentioned earlier, and then after the debates, there was a conference in Atlanta, the Red State Conference, very big conference. It's called Red State, sponsored by Eric Erickson, and he, as a result of some of the conduct by Donald Trump, the front runner, uninvited Donald Trump to speak at Red State. And so I guess I want to start with, did you watch the debates?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I watched the 5 o'clock and the 9 o'clock.
So what was your, I guess, overall impression about Fox? You think that they were fair? Were they too harsh? What was your impression about the way Fox handled them?
Well, look, if you are vying to be the president of the United States of America and you get upset over journalists asking you questions, I don't think you're ready to be in the room with Vladimir Putin, Hassan Rouhani, Xi Jinping, or deal with ISIS, Boko Haram, or any of the other global Islamic jihadist movements that are out there. So, I would expect a debate to be as rigorous as it was. Now, what I am going to look to see is when the Democrats have their debate, will the people in the mainstream liberal progressive media be as tough on the Democrat candidates like Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders or whomever, as we saw the Fox correspondents were. So I want people to go through a crucible, because we're talking about a very important time for the history and the future of this nation. We have to make sure we have a tried and true and tested individual. So the questions that most of them got, they're going to get asked those questions when they come to a general election in front of the full media.
That's what I thought, too. In fact, I got to thinking about was reading all this criticism of Fox being too harsh was Fox is known as says it's fair and balanced, but it's known as a conservative news outlet. If they had just flung softballs all evening long and whatever someone said, just say, gee, that's so, thank you very much, Senator so-and-so. How about you, Governor? Yep. People thought, well, that's a waste of time.
Well, you know something, and I know you love this thing and your other ladies here, a diamond. A diamond is nothing but a black rock until you put it through intense pressure and heat. Steel has to be purified through intense heat. You look at our special operators like Navy SEALs and Green Beret. Not everyone gets to be a Green Beret. Not everyone gets to be a Navy SEAL and wear that trident. Why? Because we take them through a crucible. We take them through a hardened test before we send them out there to do battle, or that beautiful thing that you wear around your neck. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm glad that Fox went in there and threw the tough questions, because you have to be able to challenge these individuals and get them to not believe that this is going to be the layup. This is not about every kid gets a trophy, folks. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
And so, we have to separate the wheat from the chaff.
So what did you think about Donald Trump's answer at the very first question in the second debate, where they said, if you don't win this nomination, do y'all promise you wouldn't go third party? And then raise your hand if you don't. He was the one to raise his hand.
We have a saying in the military that there is no I in team. And I think that that's a very important aspect that we all need to understand. If you are about the team, if you're about, and I'm not talking about the GOP team, I'm talking about the American team. It is not about you. It is not about elevating yourself. It is not about people being nice to you and you getting your way. We already have that somewhat in 1600 Pennsylvania right now. This is about service, sacrifice, and commitment to this republic.
I agree. And, I have to say on Donald Trump, I could imagine someone I thought of as a really solid conservative answering that question by saying something like, I love this country. I'm in this race for this country, and if someone were to win this nomination, I truly feared would be in some way harmful. Maybe I'd think about a third party run. But my sense in listening to Donald Trump is because, to me, the way it struck me, because the race is about him. It's an egotistical, if I can't have it. In fact, his answer was kind of like, well, yeah, I'll be loyal to the party as long as I get the nomination.
Well, and we've heard this a lot, as long as the party is nice to me and people are nice to me and so was not nice to me, this person is a loser. If I'm Vladimir Putin, I'm sitting back and looking at this, I'm saying, okay, here we go again. Someone that I will be able to take advantage of. Because,
walk all over.
Yeah, because, being a former KGB, he understands that aspect of psychological warfare and how you can get under someone's skin very easily. And I think that you have seen him do that. Case in point, on the 4th of July, when he called President Obama to wish him a happy Independence Day. And it was the same time Russian jets were flying right off the coast of the United States of America.
I missed that story.
Oh, it's out there.
Wow, I hardly missed any stories. That's amazing. So
that's why you have me around.
That's right. That's right. Well, I also thought in the first debate at 5 o'clock, I had originally wished, and I did think that in part the second debate suffered from simply having 10 people in 2 hours. That's a problem by itself. The earlier debate, people had a little more time.
It was more substantive.
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah. And, Carly Fiorina has been on the show a few times, and I thought she just really stepped up, and I thought she just did a fabulous job in sounding strong and confident. And
she absolutely crushed it. And if you looked at her interviews that have been subsequent to that, I mean, the one against Chris Matthews, I mean, Mr. Hardball, got whiffed out, like he was playing whiff ball, T-ball. He was speechless. If you looked at her on the Sunday shows, I mean, very strong, very resolute, very sharp, very competent. So without a doubt, someone had to be the breakout candidate from that 5 o'clock debate, and she was. And I think that you will end up seeing her maybe in the top 5 or 6 as we go forth.
I do too. I did see there was a poll just after the debate, I think the next day or so, and still Donald Trump was in first place, but he was down quite a bit. They had Senator Cruz in second place, and I don't have it in front of me, or it's someplace in my piles I can't find quickly, but I believe Carly Fiorina was 4th or 5th. She was much higher up. She was 4th. Okay, Lori Sigling, she was 4th. So I think people, it's interesting. I said earlier at the start of the show, it's so important to watch these debates and to really understand these people and picture them when they get the famous call at 3 a.m. and X has happened, and what do we do? Do we send in troops? How are we going to solve this? You need that kind of decisive leadership and strength and executive responsibility.
One of the great quotes of Plato was that, and I'm kind of paraphrasing. He said, one of the penalties for not participating in politics is that you will be governed by your inferiors. So I believe that more Americans are realizing that government is having too much of an intrusive and invasive nature into their everyday lives. You're having more conversations at the kitchen tables and in the living rooms. My 2 daughters, 22 and 18, sat and watched every single minute of both of those debates.
That's great.
And, driving back from Nacogdoches, I mean, we had some really good conversations because they're realizing this is about their future. Too many young people graduating from college and they don't have opportunities. They can be dependent. They can have the government absolve and remove their college student debt loan, but they realize that someone has to pay for that. So I think this is a very crucial point for the evolution of our republic.
I really do too. I think those debates were, I think people were ahead of time kind of thinking, well, gee, there's no heir apparent, so everybody and their brother's jumping in, and maybe my barber's going to jump in next week. But the more I thought about it, I had 2 other observations. One was, I think that a lot of people are so concerned about the direction for America. I think a lot of the 17, or at least some of them, are really in for exactly the right reasons. They just want to get America back on track. And you heard in many of the statements they made this love of America, something you never hear from this administration, the current administration. Love of America, promise of America. I know we can get back on track. I found that very heartening.
No, it's incredibly heartening. And when as you said, you look at those 17, any one of them is more than capable as opposed to really what you have coming up on the other side. But understand this, don't discount the fact that, the Vice President, Joe Biden, could jump into this race, sometime within the month, because their first debate on the Democrat side is not toward the end of October.
Yeah, I understand he's on vacation this week trying to ponder it all. And it's funny because I have one of my best friends from law school who's a lovely person, and I don't know why she's such a liberal Democrat, but she's otherwise lovely. But she has actually said several times, I don't know why you guys make fun of Joe Biden. We really like him. I mean, you're just kind of amazed.
He's the likable guy, and I think that is what is really causing some consternation on the side of the Democrats, because Hillary Clinton does not have that likability of Bill Clinton, and that is so important when you have to run on pure emotion and not on policy, not on solutions, not on your principles and philosophy of governance, which we have seen over the past 6.5 years are failing. 2.3% GDP growth, that should not be the new normal. Ronald Reagan had us clipping at 7 to 8% GDP growth at this time in his administration.
Amen to that. Well, we're talking with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and he's just a fountain of knowledge and inspiration and patriotism. So I thank you so much for coming in tonight.
My pleasure.
And we're going to zip off to our break, so we have a small amount of time before the top of the hour. But please stay tuned on our short break, and we'll come back in the second hour with Lori Medina and Mari Sullivan. And we'll come back in just a few minutes for the final segment of this first hour. This is Debbie Georgatos and Ladies Can We Talk on 660 AM, The Answer.
660 AM, The Answer.